Welcome back to another episode of Sustainability in the Sea, a podcast produced and hosted by FutureSwell. You heard me. We have officially rebranded from the Conservationist Collective to FutureSwell, so we'll be known as that going forward. That's where all of our handles will be. I'm going to put all the same things in the show notes. It's all the same profile, so you don't have to worry about anything, but that's our big announcement that we teased and explained a little bit in the last episode. So really excited for this new chapter and what it means for our company. We grew out of that name, and we think that this one represents all the directions that we're headed as far as ocean conservation. But anyway, back to the episode. So I'm sitting down with Max Sano, the founder of Greenzine. I met him at the Aspen Future Leaders Climate Summit in Miami. I did an episode on that, talking about the value of climate conferences if you want to check it out. He founded the Greenzine as a way to include more environmental stories in press coverage because, as we know, the press kind of sometimes does a really poor job of covering these types of topics and covering them in an equitable way or in a way that represents the reality of the situation and in a way that covers solutions. So I just wanted to invite him on the show to discuss how he founded that. You know, he's still in school. He's a young person. He really believed in this and just wanted to, chart a course in this type of environmental field. And we also talk a lot about writing and how that's a critical skill that you need, whatever type of environmental work you want to do. It's like one of the most underrated skills. He's accepting contributors on an ongoing rolling basis, whether you are a writer or you want to get published on a few articles, or if you want to produce content. He's accepting all sorts of contributors to help bring in different stories. Specifically, ocean contributors are the ones that I'm going to champion, but he takes things for a lot of different topics. So if you're interested in getting published, adding a few articles on your resume, this is definitely an episode for you. And if not, I hope that it opens up your mind to ways that our climate press coverage can be improved and ways that we can support that as well. So welcome back to another episode of Sustainability and the Sea. Welcome, Max, to Sustainability in the Sea.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, me too. We haven't had someone who works in your area of climate communications on the show yet. And so I also I think that when we first met, I was ranting a little bit about how press and media doesn't always tell the climate story at all, or in the way that is maybe the most productive for the movement. So really excited to talk about that. But first, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do, where you're based? I know you're in school right now, and we just met last month.
Hi, everybody. My name is Max Sano. I use he, him pronouns. I am born and raised in New York City. I live in Queens, Astoria, and I am the founder and lead editor at the Greenzine, an interdisciplinary multimedia intersectional news platform for youth by youth.
I feel like when I learned about what you were doing at Greenzine, and for context for listeners, me and Max met at Aspen Ideas Climate. It was the youth leaders the weekend before. It was just like a more intimate social format. So we all got to really get to know each other. And I remember realizing truly what Greenzine was doing and feeling so like a wave of relief, right? Because, and I'm sure you all talk about it too internally, but how news covers climate can be, how would you describe it? It's like doom and gloom, or not talking about it at all, or not you calling it what it is what can be feel frustrating for me. And what I guess caused you to feel so frustrated that you were like, all right, I got to do something I got to be the solution.
That was definitely part of the frustration because I have always been someone from a young age that was interested in following the news, interested in narrative building, and that can look very different when you're not thinking about it in a climate setting. But honestly, I just always love to write. I love to read the news or otherwise, and I really just wanted to provide a way for young people to express their perspectives, especially if they're involved in such interesting movements or organizations. Like I did a lot of climate organizing in undergrad, I was media relations chair for a chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby, which is a national chapter-based organization trying to pass a carbon fee, a carbon tax. And from that experience, I realized like how important communication can be, especially when you're working with people from different age groups, from different political backgrounds, from different industries. And it just came from me wanting to put my own voice out there, but not feeling like I had a platform to do it. Like I had been writing for different organizations, different research teams. This was like my first half of college. And then I realized going into the pandemic that I felt like I wasn't getting my perspective out there and hearing so many other young people's perspectives on the research that we're doing. For example, plastic pollution prevention in Belize or the neurotransmitters in our brain that affect our emotions. Like some of these really what I thought were cool and interesting research topics not really being shared, at least among young people, but also in the broader um, environmental movement, and forget about just like mainstream attention to it. So I just wanted to create almost like a clearinghouse or a repository or just some sort of um, pardon the research heavy words like database for just what young people in the movement or that want to be part of the movement are thinking about. And it's sort of blossomed into what it is now, where we have a group of editorial members for all students or just recently graduated students between 18 and 26 years old. And we really much care about, we love to read and write as well. And we're doing very different research within environmental topics. Some of us are food sovereignty advocates, others are doing, one person's doing a PhD in evolutionary biology. So it's just the range of perspectives is just so exciting. And we always come to every report, every submission we get, be it a poem, be it a music video in one case, which was pretty awesome. I want to get more people that are doing that kind of work too. And it's made me think broadly about what communication looks like. I'm a writer, but I've been trying to get more into multimedia in terms of videos and reels. I had some good conversations with Carissa and a lot of other members at of the Future Leaders cohort at Aspen Ideas about this. And you have to meet people where they're at. And I think a lot of young people are, you know, accessing media in ways that maybe other generations aren't too. And so Greenzine's a lot about trying to meet people where they are, but also pushing people to think about topics that, maybe they wouldn't normally think about as environmental topics. And that's what excites me a lot about it.
I really love that you cover like such a broad range of topics because environmentalism is such an umbrella term now. And there are so many sub niches that are being branched off into, like you mentioned, food sovereignty or plastics or oceans or all these things. Wait, so before you started Greenzine, because it sounds like it was founded during the pandemic, were you majoring in like journalism or press in college?
No, actually, I wasn't. I just like to write and read. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
What are
my
you,
major is
what are you
government
majoring?
environmental studies, with a minor in Middle East studies and Arabic. So I was always interested in interdisciplinary thinking. Like that was what brought me into this project.
Okay, that's incredible. Yeah, I feel like um you never know where your path is going to take you, but I always talk about on this show like you can go back to what you did when you were younger. So you're saying like, "Oh, I always loved to read and I always loved to write." And so I found an organization where folks get to read what I write and are including multimedia into the format too. And I think when you look at like I love Grist, right? Grist is like a great environmental media platform. If folks haven't heard of it, but they have like articles, but then they also will make like little reels or videos or teasers, and then they'll also have some news platforms will also have podcasts now too. So what have been some of your favorite topics you've covered at Greenzine, and like what do you hope to cover in the future?
Well, it's actually interesting. One of the things that we've been starting to cover more, largely in part of conversations with you and others, is marine and ocean issues. Like it was funny. One of our latest contributors, he was supposed to attend the Future Leaders Climate Summit, but he couldn't because of visa issues getting in the way of like the timing of attending. But he does a lot of coastal marine um, conservation work in Lebanon, and just recently wrote an article about a marine nature preserve that preserves, I think, one of, if not the last coastal ecosystem in Lebanon. And so just being able to my um, get into a new topic that I don't know much about, but also be able to learn more. Like my dad's from Beirut, so just learning more about my own culture through uh, the topic of marine conservation. Like you wouldn't think about that, but he delves into the history of this specific coastal region going back centuries, but then ties it into what is going on today with coastal conservation efforts. That topic or that article, I feel like encapsulates a lot of what we're trying to do, is trying to get people to think about climate action and climate change in different perspectives, and that's something that I'm trying to push more in terms of getting out of my silo of food policy advocacy. Although it's very important, for example, am trying to write a little summary about Ocean Climate Action Plan to come out in the next month as well, and having conversations with you and other oceans advocates. That's something that I really want to push myself to do in 2023. But in terms of topics that I'm really happy Greenzine has been able to cover is a range from fast and slow fashion, uh, um, energy systems, thinking about how to be an energy advocate. You can do that by being like a marketer.
Yeah.
And like there's so many different topics we've covered over the years.
I was going to ask because I feel like a lot of the larger climate conversation is around clean energy and the energy transition to decarbonize. And I'm wondering, like, do you find that some of this that you're leaning towards stories that surround that because that's kind of what's being talked about with the general public mostly, or do you want to help diversify I know ultimately you're doing many stories, but I'm just wondering if you feel like a pull to cover energy because that's what like the world is talking about when it comes to climate right now.
Really, really funny you mentioned that, but that's actually what we not. I don't want to say avoid, but like one, we don't get as many pitches about that, surprisingly enough.
Okay.
And also, like you said, it's very saturated within the media, how we're covering energy issues, which don't get me wrong, it's a huge percentage of global carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions. So I don't want to understate how important having those discussions are, but a big part of, I think, what makes people like inspired to be part of Greenzine is to bring in their own personal voice and their own experiences. Like we've gotten a lot of poetry, which is for me, maybe I don't have as much experience doing myself, but I think it's really valuable to get into the mind and the mental effects of climate change, and then being able to communicate how it connects to your family, to your loved ones, to your connection to the land. I think that is something that we've gotten more of than even energy issues, but it's been a big range. Maybe there's a lot of food system stuff just because I write about it and I have more friends that write about it. So maybe that's my silo coming into play. But yeah, not as much energy stuff actually.
What is your what's your big I know Greenzine's growing first 5 years are always the hardest for the leaders, right? I feel like I'm in the thick of that too. And it's like, what is your hope a few years from now that you'll be doing at Greenzine? Because you'll be graduated. I know you have a group of contributors, but yeah, I guess if you could dream big.
Well, the goal is to have dedicated editors for different categories, to have regular contributors. Like a lot of the contributors we get because they're students or involved with a crazy amount of other activities. They'll post an article or something once, twice, and then move on to doing other work. So I think having um, having contributors that continuously interact with us is something that I think would be a great goal to have in the next 5 years. Also, to do more of what I'm doing this year, like we've been hosting more workshops in person with high school students, with college students. We will be doing that anyway this week, actually, for climate storytelling conference based out of George Washington University that happens every year, called Planet Forward Summit. And so interacting with people and teaching and like sharing my experience about how to pitch stories or how to think about climate change in an interdisciplinary lens. Even though I don't have that journalism background, I think communications is so important. Whether you want to be a policy advocate, whether you want to be a lawyer, a consultant, an artist, you need to have a communications mindset.
It all goes back to that, like everything, whether you're writing an email or we're talking right now, it's like, it's all really communications.
Yeah, and if you can understand that fundamental skill and not get too bogged down in which industry you want to work in, because I'm sure you face this when you're going into this, like your first job or even your first internship. Like, how are you supposed to know what you want 5, 10 years down the line?
Yeah.
Just one thing. But it's important to think about those foundational skills and what brings you joy in that regard.
I think that, and me and my co-founder Alex talk about this a lot, like writing is probably one of the most under emphasized skills that can make or break your career in a lot of ways. And so do you have any advice? I mean, I work in not communications, but media and project management and nonprofits, but still it all goes really back to writing and communications. And so for those listening, do you have skills for folks that are maybe in high school or in college to improve their writing abilities and maybe work and refine that skill so that they feel confident in it going forward as they enter like a full-time career?
That is a great question, and it's something as an editor I think about all the time. The biggest thing you'll probably hear from your editor or your teacher or from your boss or whoever is using active voice. So the subject followed by the verb followed by the description. And while it sounds really simple when you say it, like I still struggle with wanting to incorporate all of the intricacies of a scene or an issue followed by a solution. Like give your writing space to breathe. And what I mean by that is just think about how you want to lead from one idea to another. And especially with web writing, like you don't want paragraphs and paragraphs. Like you want each line or maybe 2, 3 lines to be its own body of text. Because people, like if you're reading it on your phone, which most people are, you're just skimming. And if you have these huge chunks of text, like people are just gonna scroll along and forget about it. And it makes you think differently as a writer. Unfortunately, that's just how people are consuming media in a lot of ways now. So
yeah, you have to be so concise. You have to understand a topic to so much depth, which is why journalists are like doing the Lord's work, right? It's like you have to understand this topic in so much depth that you can convey it in one sentence.
Absolutely. And then you need to be able to like actually like hook people in. Like you hear with like the 5 body paragraph structure when you start writing your intro, your 3 bodies, and your conclusion. That is something that I try to stress people to get out as soon as you can.
Like ignore it.
Ignore it. It's great in terms of like an organizational structure, but it's gonna prevent you from being a creative storyteller because most people like in yourself, like it comes into your intuition, like you're not going to be thinking that way when you're trying to communicate the story of a frontline community that's facing like food injustice or someone that just went through or like is like contributing like a personal narrative about like a letter to their descendants. That's one of our pieces. Someone writes a letter to their grandchildren or like to the next generation. Like you're not going to be framing it like that. It's going to be a stream of thoughts, and how you communicate that, you need to break it down idea by idea. And so giving that space to breathe, I think, is something I would say is helped me a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also practice too, right? Like you really just need to find your voice, whatever that comes from, when you're young or a student still, like exploring lots of different formats of writing, right? Like nowadays it's like, can you make a a carousel post on Instagram, or can you write an article, or can you write, it sounds like a letter or a poem? And I I can't really, from my experience, I feel like a good avenue is to also just like write to write, like that's helpful for practice.
My first article I think that was ever published on a site was a listicle, like a BuzzFeed style thing, and it was like top 5 tips to be like a green activist or a climate activist on your college campus. And it helps when it's something like that because you know what the structure of it's going to be, even though it's a little bit overused. I would say it helped me think about what I want my structure in any article to be. And from there, it grew on, just trying out different formats, breaking it up with subheaders by question or by quotes. You can include tweets or Instagram posts in articles if you're doing web content. And everybody's writing academic articles or essays for classes, so you're already going to have that one down.
Yeah, you have that experience from class, but you're right. Like all the blog posts are like 5 things or a list or like something you need to know or whatever. And that it gives a sense of familiarity. I was actually having this conversation about video content because it's like you're teaching something new in every video, right? But when an audience or a viewer sees your face, there needs to be some level of familiar, like association of the format to help, like now to kind of break through the noise of like how much content we're all consuming video wise on social media and other platforms. So it's like, can you stick to a familiar enough format that when they see your face, they're like, okay, I know that it's going to be like one of these 3 things. And so I'm trying to find that for myself because I like doing many different things. And, but there's benefit to having people just know like, okay, it's not like a wild card right now. I know this isn't going to take like 20 minutes or something like that. I know I'm going to read 5 action items and come away with learning something new.
Yeah, and it's something that I try to get with the Greenzine because you have so many different age groups that we try to work with, so many different academic backgrounds. We're working more and more with writers and contributors that English is not their first language, and so just trying to be inclusive with how we're defining terms is in and of itself a conversation that we've been having internally, not just for like a stylistic choice, but also just like it's made us re-examine our assumptions around basic what we thought were basic definitions. And I think that's really important when you're trying to build an inclusive movement is to be to acknowledge these potential areas of confusion. It makes you a better communicator.
Yeah. Do you hope to ultimately like down the line also be able to like translate your articles and things like that?
That is one of the things that we have on our pitch deck whenever we are communicating with a new potential donor or new collaborator. That's a big part of what we're hoping to achieve, particularly in Spanish, French, and Arabic is our goal within the next year or 2 to get all of our articles like translated into those languages. But we want to expand that into as many languages as possible. We've been beginning to publish articles this year in both English and the language of the author, that the non-English language. So we had a contributor write an article about personal carbon footprint in English and in French, and then an article about gentrification in Mexico City in English and in Spanish. So we're trying to do that without. It's hard when it's a volunteer-based organization because I feel like yeah, I feel like there needs to be some distribution of work. So usually when it's a translated piece like that, the whole team will really, the whole editorial team, which is like 4 to 6 of us, will really spend a lot more attention on like the English portion of the article to like give space for the writer to think about the translation in their home language.
Yeah, that's so important. It's also like, you know, especially if you're trying to build an international presence for Greenzine, it's like you want to make sure this is reaching the right folks. So it has to be accessible to those folks.
Yeah, and even just thinking about having text and captions for reels, you know, to make sure that it's accessible for yeah. So it's something that we've been thinking much more consciously of going into 2023 and just continuing to think about how to make our work more accessible and inclusive to anyone that wants to consume it.
Yeah. So you have a goal to help broaden your contributor base, right, of writers. And so we are getting constant messages and comments and emails of like, how can I help? How can I intern? And we don't really accept many interns because we're trying not to scale too quickly. But we love sending people in different directions. So we have like a segment on our newsletter where we talk about internships and jobs, but we don't ever have opportunities that are related to what you focus on. But you're accepting contributing authors, right? So the folks listening that might want to help it move into this area of climate or environmental communications, what are you offering right now?
So we have an open-ended acceptance for submissions. And what I mean by that is you can just go to our website, greenzine.org/join. And we have a quick survey that you can fill out about your name, your email, what topic you want to discuss, whether or not it falls into one of the categories we already have or a new one. In that case, we usually add on to our categories. And then just a brief few sentences paragraph about what you want to write about, what do you want to contribute. People have submitted their poems, their artwork in one case, music video, podcast, Q&A style, interview with audio or without audio. There's so many different ways people have contributed, and it's been through their internships. They want to reflect on it. And so they write a mini reflection. People have translated an academic article or that they read that they thought was cool, or an essay that they wrote, and we help format it into a journalistic piece. So there's a lot of ways we've been able to bring people in, especially if they care, right? But they don't necessarily know what they want to write about. We have plenty of ideas too. So even if you want to do something but don't know, you can also just put that in the survey too, what your interests are, and then we can try to help connect you.
And that's so helpful too for resume building, right? Because then on your resume, yeah, you have your classes, maybe an internship, but then you can also be like, these are published articles that I either was the primary author on or help support through this. And that's such a great avenue. I remember when I first started exploring this like beast of social media, I just like started writing some contributing blog posts to platforms. And I was like, I'll write about orcas for your website. And it's like, from being on the other end of that, that's so welcomed, right? Because you want as many perspectives as possible. There's no limit for how much content you should be putting out because of the world that we live in. You're also welcoming creatives that might want to explore other ways of communication, right? What types of projects are you kind of like dipping your toes into in that way?
So we've been trying to get people, if they've written an article or written with us, to make a quick video of like summarizing their article so we can put it on our socials. That's one way that we haven't started doing yet, but that we want to start doing this year. Another way is to, like I mentioned earlier, like we're really interested in getting more into podcast space and trying to get people to communicate their ideas through audiovisual formats. People have submitted their poems, their reflections on what it was like to do a community garden with their family during the pandemic. That was one or two people have done that. So there's a lot of ways that you can contribute, even if you don't feel like you consider yourself an aspiring journalist or researcher or policy advocate. You're still contributing to the solutions by presenting your thoughts in an artistic way. It's something I care about.
I also always tell people who are like more open to that kind of creative and content creation route, but maybe are not trying to be like, an influencer. It's like, well, there's actually like so many organizations and people that would really welcome you to help make videos or to help create visuals or branding and things like that. And it sounds like between Reels and the other platforms that you want to explore, like that would be really helpful for Greenzine to get in front of potential new audiences.
Yeah, and we used to have monthly newsletters that I'm hoping to bring back at some point in the near future, and hence the name Greenzine, sort of how we started as an email newsletter. But one of our previous contributors, she would help design the titles and the covers for that, and really was able to express herself creatively through that. And so there's no shortage of opportunities if you're interested in um, sharing a Pinterest board of potential covers, or um, amalgamating together different designs into something that you want to share.
Yeah. We always talk about, specifically on sustainability in the sea, like how like everyone is needed in the movement, and actually like desperately needed, right? Like there's all these scientists in this field, and there's not enough creatives that are like making it fun and beautiful, and like that these designs are like really what's the most eye-catching for people. And I think that this is a great example of how all of those skills can be refined for early career folks, or turn into more and different work down the line. It sounds like if you volunteer to be a contributor for Greenzine, you can also kind of explore all these other different formats and mediums for communications that are all related to sustainability, environment, climate, and even oceans.
Yeah, and one such contributor, like, she is an energy justice advocate. She's really interested in the intersection of like our energy systems and constructive community-based policy solutions. But she's also super big into cartooning and has made climate cartoons that are inspired by environmental issues.
Yes.
All this work. So like you can also do both. Like you don't have to confine yourself to one form of expression. It actually makes you at least presenting wise, like it really shows the holistic nature of climate action, even within that one specific person's lived experiences. And I think we should be encouraging more of that than not.
Yeah.
And I've had conversations recently with one environmental lawyer who's just beginning to start his own firm, and has been an environmental scientist before he started practicing law. And from what he's told me, and what he's had from other conversations with potential employers, like if you're published before you even have a first-time job, be it like on a blog post or an academic piece or whatever, they people are so impressed by that. People, like, if you say authored by dot dot dot, will immediately be considering you more than if it's not there. And so I think if that's really what your focus is too, which I totally understand, wanted to find a job that provides either room for you to do your passions, or your job is your passion regardless, being an author of something is really helpful in that regard too.
Yeah, there's no downfall in, or there's no downside in publishing a few articles. Like if anything, you figure out what you're interested in, you get to learn how to package information in a different way, and you have like extra things on your resume.
Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't. Awesome. And then I asked you what your vision was for Greenzine going forward. But I always ask as a final question for guests, like if you had to write a billboard for that all of the most powerful people in the world were going to see, think about like government leaders, country leaders, they're making decisions about our environment. What would that billboard say if you got to design it and share this one message with all these people who really are kind of behind the steering wheel of the future of our planet?
Wow. Not leaving it on a light note, I see.
No, just like what would be your message? Everyone's got their own.
No, that's very true. And I think it kind of stems to why I created Greenzine to begin with, is if we're trying to address the most complicated issue of our time, we need the most holistic and diverse of opinions and perspectives. And so mine would just be that. I would just encapsulate that into some type of very ideally aesthetically pleasing billboard.
Yeah, I think like I learned this in many different trainings throughout my career, but like the more perspectives, the better, right? The more diverse the perspectives, the better. I think that we can find ourselves specifically in the environmental movement, sometimes in echo chambers. And really at the end of the day, it's like, I don't want to just know about the ocean. Like I want to know, it's all connected. I need to know about what's happening with food sovereignty, even though it might not be my specialty. And so having all of those perspectives represented in one place is so important. I'm so grateful for the work you're doing.
Thank you, Carissa, and I'm glad you helped me get out of my silo and think a lot more about the oceans because it's just something that I didn't really think about as much even a month ago, even though like I have a very strong connection to riverways, especially the Hudson River, uh, Hudson Bay. I grew up sailing partially actually in high school and just having a strong connection to that marine ecosystem. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all connected. Sometimes we just forget, right? We just have to go back and reconnect later on. You like think back about your childhood and you're like, oh, I used to play in all these waterways. All my most cherished memories are in these like, why did I lose that? And it's like life just got in the way and we just got to get back there. So I appreciate you also creating pathways for people to reconnect to the things that they're interested about. So thank you
But
so
we're
much,
all
Max. Where can people find you?
You can follow me on Instagram at max_ecology, or you can just follow the Greenzine too, the underscore Greenzine, and go to our website, greenzine.org, to check out all of our work. And yeah,
Yeah,
if
there's
you're,
some great stories on there. I hope you get some contributor requests from this awesome community over here.
that would be amazing. It could be oceans related or not, but hopefully oceans related.
Cool, awesome. Thanks so much.